was always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
It's always the Jags.
Always the Jags.
Welcome into Always the Jags, your number one podcast for all things Jacksonville, all things Jaguars, all things Duval. Look, Liam Coen said it best. We're not apologizing for winning. We're not going to feel bad for winning. We're not going to feel guilty for winning. We're not apologizing for freaking wins out here. And I think that perfectly sums up the attitude of this Jaguars team. And it sums up what happened in Arizona because it was stressing me out, right? I almost had a heart attack. I was literally moving this weekend from Charlotte to Jacksonville, getting the rest of my stuff into Jacksonville. And I had this huge stressful move. And then Trevor Lawrence has a game with 4 turnovers. And I'm sitting there stressed out of my mind while I'm trying to pack up all this stuff. It was not great all around. But the Jaguars came out with the dub, with the victory, with the win. And like I said, Liam Coen put it eloquently. We're not apologizing for wins. So people can look at that win and say, oh, wow, that was almost a loss, all this thing. We're not going to apologize for it. We're not going to be sorry that we went to Arizona and beat a team at home. We're not going to be sorry. And I think that's something every Jaguars fan, we can look at that game and still have questions about Trevor Lawrence. Trust me, I still have questions, but I don't have questions about Liam Coen. I don't have any questions about James Gladstone either. I like James Gladstone as soon as he came in. I wasn't sure about Liam Coen. Oh, yeah. And the thing is, you would think it was a different guy from his first press conference to the guy he is in the locker rooms and on the field and what he's doing, right? Like, he is fierce. He is fiery. He's got an edge, and it's infected everybody. And, like, it's kind of infected Trevor Lawrence. It just hasn't really translated into, like, defining victories, right? So, I mean, I don't even think there's enough time in the season for Trevor Lawrence to prove that there shouldn't be any questions. Like, in order for Trevor to prove there shouldn't be any questions, he would essentially have to win out, right? Because the teams that you're going to beat, like, well, first of all, the questions will only get louder if Trevor Lawrence doesn't beat the Titans twice and the Jets. And if we beat the Colts at home, great. That'll be a step in the right direction. But unless Trevor, like, puts on a clinic against the Broncos or the Colts, the questions are going to remain into next season. It's just that simple, because it's based upon the level of competition that we have. So let's dive into the game a little bit more and talk about what happened out there in Glendale when the Jaguars took on the Arizona Cardinals. And, from the first drive, we forced I think they got 1 first down, but the defense gets off the field. We get a punt. We marched down there 7-zip. It was a beautiful drive. Started at our own, 2-yard line. Trevor hits Brenton Strange on, the first or second pass off the rip. Gets a first down, gives us breathing room. Then, I think it was a couple of plays later, then Travis Etienne hits a 45-yarder, completely flipping the field. And next thing we know, Travis Etienne's in the end zone again for a touchdown. 7-0. And that kind of made the game feel like, again, I didn't necessarily think it was going to be another 35-6, but it kind of felt like, okay, the Jaguars are going to be, they're gonna control this game. That's what we thought. The Jaguars are going to control this game. Then defense forces another 3-and-out. Great, chance to go up 14-zip. Except we're back at our own end zone. And the Cardinals have an underrated defensive line. I mean, Josh Sweat has 9.5 sacks. That's more than Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker combined. And Josh Sweat definitely doesn't make more than Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen combined. Pretty sure he makes less than Josh Allen. So the fact that he has 9.5 sacks, and then you got Calais Campbell up there who has 5 sacks. I think the only defensive tackle with more sacks is Eric Armstead. Walter Nolan, who really made his presence felt, especially in this game. And I can't remember who the other guy on the other side is, but the Cardinals have an underrated defensive line. And they showed it when, Josh Sweat was able to bat. Someone got his hand on Trevor's pass, and Walter Nolan intercepted it and ran it back for a touchdown. Now, that was such a fluky play, and I wasn't that bothered by it because I knew our offense was going to get right back on the field. Like, whenever the defense scores, it's a great momentum booster, right? And you can't allow that to, ricochet, but also our offense had just put together a really long drive. Their offense had just went 3-and-out, and then our offense is back in the field. The defense scored, but when we kick off again, our offense is going to be back on the field. So I was like, if we get another long drive, we can tire them out, and it'll be fine. And that's almost what we did until we got to the end zone. and Calais Campbell got those hands up, and Trevor Lawrence's pass got deflected and intercepted. And on that play, I was so pissed, right? Because I was like, this end zone, this red zone interception thing is Trevor's worst quality. I was so mad, and I hate it so much, right? Um, because it's one of those things that's been happening even when he was starting to turn a page. He still just continued to do it, and it's still happening this year. Like it started with like Derek Stingley got one against the Texans, a red zone interception back I think in 22, when we were supposed to be ready to beat the Texans and Davis Mills, red zone pick. This year, the Bengals, red zone pick. This year, the Raiders, two of the worst defenses in the league, red zone pick. If he doesn't throw that pick against the Bengals, we are 8-3. And the Raiders game did not have to be that stressful because if he doesn't throw that red zone pick, the Raiders are in catch-up mode. And we just cruise to a victory with the run game. So this and having the Cardinals red zone pick again. But watching the play, the pass was deflected, right? Like when Devon Hamilton got his hands up for the 2-point conversion, it was a good throw. It was just a better play by the defensive tackle than it was an error on Trevor. So, and I do think personally they should make another QB stat called deflections, because sometimes an interception isn't necessarily a QB's fault. I think if the ball touches the hands of anybody else, whether it's another player or another, if it touches the hands of anybody else after it leaves the quarterback's hand, it should be considered a deflection. Should only be considered an interception if the first person to touch the ball after the quarterback throws it is the one who intercepts the pass. My personal opinion, because sometimes it can make your interception numbers look worse than they actually are. But again, in Trevor's case, like I said, this game would still be bad if that was counted as a deflection because it still happened, right? But that wasn't on him, basically. It would be a way to that way what interceptions are actually on the quarterback. But that gives new life to the Cardinals, and their offense is able to put together a long drive and score. And then we're going back and forth. But when we finally retook the lead, we had so many times to just put our foot on their neck and just win the game. Because it was a strong game by our defense. Like, it was very bend but don't break. I would see guys make great plays in the middle of the field. Jacoby Brissett was dealing. And then next thing you know, just the 3-and-out sequence, he can't get anything going, they have to punt. And it was like, it's almost like the defense like plays away so like where you can take stuff and feel good. And then suddenly they clamp down and the offense isn't expecting it and nothing's working, and then that's it. I would have liked to see more from our defensive line against that Cardinals offensive line. But the Cardinals are a really underrated team. I don't think they're as bad as their record shows, especially if they had beaten the Titans earlier this year. But anyway, so throughout this game, going to the end, like skipping ahead to the end of the game, 4th down. I understand the logic, and I was explaining it to my wife too while we were watching it. I was like, if we get a 1st down, we end the game. And I feel like Liam Coen is like, yeah, if we get a 1st down, we end the game. But his first couple of plays didn't seem to reflect that mentality or those play calls or that mentality from the offense. Because if we get a 1st down, we win the game doesn't mean, hey, we got 4 downs here. No, that just means in 3 downs, we need to get a 1st down. So you don't have to get it all in the first one, but just like we need 5, 2, 3, whatever it takes, we got to get that 1st down, right? And that's what the Cardinals are defending, but you don't have to get it all in one play. But I feel like the idea was like, okay, we're going to the end zone. And I mean, again, I guess he called a running play or something. It felt like his idea was like, okay, all we need is a 1st down to win, but he didn't like instill that mindset until he's like, that's why we're going for it on 4th, because all we need is a 1st down. To me, you should have been telling that on 1st down. All we need is a 1st down to win. Get me a 1st down, right? Like the urgency hadn't clicked in. The necessity of it hadn't clicked in until we got to 4th down. And to me, by then it's too late. I would have kicked the field goal. I think kicking the field goal is the right thing to do, because no matter what, you're going to have to trust your defense, right? I mean, if you get it, then you win the game. Yeah, right. But like, players also want to be like, hey, we want to be the ones to win the game. We want to be the ones. But our defense still would have to be the ones to win the game. And the worst case scenario that happens is if you kick a field goal and then they go down and score a touchdown. That would be the worst case because then they win. Or they could go down and get a field goal and tie it up, and then we go to overtime. And it ended up working out. But I still think you kick a field goal because all that pressure to get that touchdown is on the offense. Now they got to drive down. And that's kind of the mindset with the Bengals. It's like, now again, against the Bengals, they were able to go down and score on a very questionable pass interference penalty. So to me, you kind of want to, especially on a day where your defense was playing well. But hey, I don't know. I can't like to me, like that mentality is fine if you're successful, right? Like I can sit here and say, like, hey, the reason why Liam Coen plays this, the team is winning and doing things well is because he trusts his guys to go out and get that win and do stuff like that. And like, okay, that only works though if they actually get it, right? Like it's not worth it if they can't convert on those fourth downs that you always go for. So, and even the play that he called, I don't know what was supposed to develop, but it didn't really look like he was in his bag for that one. So, but either way, the Jaguars got the win. And again, that fiery spirit that we're not apologizing for wins, exactly what's propelling the Jaguars. And let's not act like, again, people will look at this win and be like, wow, the Jaguars still a trash team. They just barely beat another trash team. Let's remember the Jaguars are the most injured team in the league. Like, the 49ers have lost a lot of players. We've lost just as many players as the 49ers have. I don't even need to fact check that because I know it's true. And again, we did draft Travis Hunter to play 2 positions, but he's out. So we lost 2 positions with that one. That's just the way that it goes. Like, we still are out of a player, even though that was a decision that we made. So let's not pretend like the Jaguars aren't the most beat up team. And remember how much the 49ers beat the Cardinals in week 2? By 2 points. And they were playing against arguably a worse quarterback in Kyler Murray. Yet everyone's like, oh, wow, look at the resilience of the 49ers able to win over there despite all their injuries. Look at the Jaguars winning despite all of our injuries. What are you talking about? We're missing our top 2 receivers. We're missing our top 2 cornerbacks. We're missing our top safety. We were missing one of our top edge rushers in this game. We had just gotten our top tight end back, and his backup was out. We were still, I don't know if we were missing Anton Harrison. I can't remember or not. But in the game against the Chargers, we had 9 starters out. We've had just as much injuries as the 49ers. But people don't talk about it because the narrative of the Jaguars being trash works in the media and stuff like that. They like that narrative. And Liam Coen is taking it and punching it in the gut and literally like destroying it. Because, again, someone was asking, like, Pete Prisco was asking, like, what do the Jaguars do well? We fight. That's it. We claw. It's the only way to put it. I can't, like, the run game isn't always consistent. The passing game, Trevor Lawrence is inconsistent. Our defense is inconsistent. Sometimes we'll get 3 or 4 turnovers in a game. Other times we'll give up 30 to Geno Smith. It's tough to pinpoint, like, what are we doing well? But I'm also like, if you look at, it could just be that we're balanced, but I think the idea is just that we fight. And you look at our losses this season, like, just take a look at our losses. 2 of them against Super Bowl contenders. The Rams are the only team that have proven themselves to be the best team in the league by far. The Rams are 100% the best team in the league and probably should be the favorites for the Super Bowl. We lost to them, 35-7. Bad loss, but Super Bowl contenders, right? Seahawks, also Super Bowl contenders, should be considered one of the class of the NFC. They almost beat the Seahawks. They almost beat the Rams on a day where Sam Darnold had 4 turnovers. Bengals lost. Technically, I still maintain we didn't lose that game because I wasn't pass interference on Travis Hunter. Technically, I feel like we should be 8-3. But even if you consider that a loss, we should never have allowed it to get that close. That one's a bad loss. And then you look at that Texans loss where we allowed them to come back. Again, to me, if the game is just the way that we lost, if we're going back and forth with the Texans, 7, 14, 21, field goal here, stuff like that, kind of like what we were doing with the Cardinals, that 36-29 win wouldn't seem so bad, especially if their defense ended up closing it out. Like, we would be hurting, but it wouldn't be like, wow, what a terrible loss by the Jaguars. Because then you look at what the Texans did to the Bills on Thursday night, and suddenly that loss doesn't look as bad either. And it would look way better if it was a back and forth game, especially in a season where no one expected us to compete with the Texans. So, like, I don't know. Let's give the Jaguars some respect for what they've been able to do. Yeah, I don't think Trevor Lawrence is playing as best as he should. He's definitely not playing to the level of a $55 million quarterback. I don't know if this is the best that Trevor can offer us, but it's not $55 million a year that he's offering us. I don't know if he'll take, like, I would prefer to keep him just because I like him. I don't know if he would ever take a pay cut. I don't know. But clearly, we're going to have to keep pieces around him in order to establish him. Jacoby Myers has been great. I definitely think we're keeping him, and I think and again, it's so great the way James Gladstone makes these decisions and these deals because, again, we signed Gabe Davis to a $13 million deal per year. Didn't work out. Had to get rid of him after pretty much one season. Ate a lot of dead cap money. By trading for Jacoby Myers with picks that he got from wheeling and dealing in the draft, now we get a chance to see, like, is Jacoby Myers washed? Can he really help Trevor Lawrence? And then we can offer him the 3 year. We're probably going to give him the same deal that we gave Gabe Davis a year ago, but we already know he works in the offense and he's much more. I don't want to say like committed to like making sure that it works, but building chemistry with Trevor because this is where he wants to be, and he needs to prove that he's worth another contract, and he probably just wants to do that here. So yeah, like that's the kind of difference in GMing that we're getting with James Gladstone. Now we got a guy who's willing to come in and prove himself, and he's proven himself, and he's going to get. I think the proper would be like a 13-14 million dollar a year deal, and I think he'll be that Christian Kirk replacement. And I think for Trevor to really take off this season, because the one thing that I'd say that our offense is lacking is that deep threat, is that bombs away explosive offense, and that's what Brian Thomas Jr. did for us at the beginning of last year. But Liam Coen started using him more in like a wide receiver one role where he would go across the middle of the field, stuff like that. Now he's a go route guy. All of his highlights with Trevor Lawrence are go routes. Browns, Patriots. Every time we needed a spark, Trevor would hit him deep because he was in single high coverage. So I think once we get him back on the field, and let's test it out versus the Titans, it's a perfect secondary to test it out. Make Brian Thomas be what he is. You can be a number one wide receiver who runs the go route constantly and just let him run and stress out the defense, make them respect the run game by stretching out the field, and then let Trevor Lawrence hit him deep. So that way we need to build his confidence back. And I think that's something Liam Coen was realizing. He was trying to have Brian Thomas Jr. Like there are some number one wide receivers that kind of do everything. Jackson Smith and Jigba is one of those guys. He just does anything. Slot, outside, inside, wherever he'll do it all. I don't think Brian Thomas Jr. is one of those do it all wide receivers, right? He can be a number one wide receiver. He's proven that. But he is a deep threat number one wide receiver. He is a beat your defense over the top number one wide receiver. And I think he just has like there's a lot of speedsters in the league, but he has better ball skills than most of those speedsters, which is what would separate him. So that's why we just need to get him running down the field. And I think once we do that, it'll add extra element to our offense. And maybe we'll see Trevor Lawrence, explored a little bit more, but that makes me feel like Jacoby Myers definitely needs to be on the field. And I mean, think about next year. Like next year, we'll have Travis Hunter back, and I think with this core of Myers, Thomas, Brian Thomas, Washington, and Travis Hunter, let Travis Hunter play defense full time as the cornerback because we already know he's the best cornerback on the roster, and then bring him in on offense whenever we want to. If we want to spark, if we want to do something, whatever it is, him and Parker Washington can be interchangeable because Parker Washington has already proven he deserves to stay. We'll have some tough contract decisions to make because Travis Etienne is still proving that he deserves to be on this team next year. And I don't know if he would take a deal of like $10-11 million a year. He probably want like a James Cook deal. I'd be willing to give him the James Cook deal. I'd be willing to give Devin Lloyd the Zach Bond deal, and I'd be willing to give Jacoby Meyer the Gabe Davis deal. I think they have all proven themselves to be essential pieces to our operation. I like Bashal Tutin and I like LaQuint Allen, but Travis Etienne is every time I think he's expendable, he makes himself more dependable. So let's see how we can take this into our win against the Titans. I said our win against the Titans. Look, we almost overlooked the Cardinals. We cannot overlook the Titans. They are still a division rival. They kept us out of the playoffs in 2023, which ended up being huge. We cannot overlook the Titans, but we can beat them. We 100% beat them. We 100% should be expected to beat them. I'm even going to drive up to Nashville because the tickets are literally like $11 right now. So I'm going to find a way to drive up to Nashville and go watch that game and support the Jaguars up in Nashville. This will be my first time being at a game where I'm not the being at a game rooting for the opposing side, basically. So yeah, let's go into Nashville and let's remind the Titans that the Jaguars are one of the best teams in the AFC South. And Cam Ward still has a lot of growing to do. And I really like, again, you don't want to use this game to like test things out in a way that's like going to potentially make you vulnerable to the Titans. But I want to see Trevor air it out. And I think the best recipe we have against the Titans is just our pass rush. Their tackles are not very good. Put the pressure on Cam Ward and he'll make mistakes. And that's all we really have to do. And then use the run game to punish them. I don't know if Jeffrey Simmons is in or not, but their run defense, I think, is middle of the pack. And if Brian Thomas Jr. is playing, stretch the field with Brian Thomas Jr. Let's see it. I remember the Titans came to town a couple years ago and we did the tailgate with Tony, and Calvin Ridley torched him, and it was beautiful. And now Calvin Ridley's on their side. So now it's time for Brian Thomas Jr. to torch the Titans. Our keys to beating the Titans is just show up. Honestly, just show up and play like it. And I like we did crush the Chargers, but it feels like this team can almost only like, or Trevor Lawrence can only like really get those plays when he's on his back, when the team needs him, when it's like things aren't going well. And Trevor Lawrence needs to figure out how to be that guy no matter what, because that's what the consistent quarterbacks do. Patrick Mahomes will evolve into something else when his back's up against the wall, but Trevor Lawrence feels like he only gets competent when his back's up against the wall. And he has some beautiful passes, like that laser to Parker Washington and that up 25-yard pass to Brenton Strange, and the other one to Parker Washington, who climbed the ladder and got it and pulled it down. Like the talent is there. We just like Liam Coen needs to figure out some way to get in Trevor's head and make him think that we're losing every second of every play, so he could put it out there, right? And I don't know if the play calling changes based upon whether we're winning or losing, but whatever it is, we just need to figure it out because we need to beat the Titans. There's no option to lose to the Titans. If the Jaguars are able, we have a realistic chance to win our next 3, and then we'd be number 1 in the AFC South, and we have a legit shot to finish at least a legit shot to finish 11-6, because I still think the Colts and the Broncos would be losses. We finish 11-6, we could win the division. We could be hosting a playoff game. So I say all that to say, let me know your thoughts about the Jaguars win over the Cardinals. Let me know if you think we're going to beat the Titans. What would be the keys to the game? And let me know your thoughts about Trevor Lawrence and the offense on a whole. Do we have a problem? Are Jaguars fans just giving him too much credit? But never forget, it was always the Jags.